Welcome to the Kelly Green Room. My name is Jonah, and today I am joined by a very special guest from 6ABC News here in Philadelphia, the one and only Jason Dumas. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Good man, how are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm very excited after an Eagles win. It always feels good to start the season with a W, especially against the Cowboys.
Yeah, 100%. It was a hard-fought division win. They never come easy. Nothing comes easy in the NFL, but especially division opponents getting a quality win against a Cowboys team that was getting its quarterback back and, had some momentum and probably had a chip on their shoulder, but they're able to get a hard-fought win.
I mean, absolutely. The Cowboys, they were swept by the Eagles last year. They don't want to be swept again, but the Eagles are starting out on the right foot, 1-0. But something that actually I was a little bit worried to see about the Eagles really take pride in their offense, and especially two of the top wide receivers in the league. But those two wide receivers, A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, only had four combined targets. Is that a worry at all for you after seeing the game?
No, obviously it's not ideal. You would want more air production and you would want in an ideal world, you would want, to stretch the field better than you did against Dallas. They did have that one long pass to Jahan Dotson. But, what matters more is that they found a way to win even despite doing that. Now, I don't think it's going to be a cause of concern moving forward. Sometimes, you got to give the other team credit. Like they're pros too. They work hard, they're coached hard, they're prepared as well. It's not just the Eagles that are going out playing no one. They're playing other professionals, and they did a good job at taking away some of the deep balls. And Jalen did a great job at adjusting, using his legs to move the chains. And keeping his composure. He didn't turn the ball over, and they found a way to win. That's what championship teams do. Everything is not always going to be ideal. The teams that separate themselves from the mediocre or even the bad teams are the teams that can win in a number of different ways. Like if you take one thing away, they'll find another way to beat you. And that's what the Eagles have proved really over the last 3 years or so. Obviously, a couple years ago, they kind of fell flat on their face after starting like 10-1. But for the most part, the Nick Sirianni era has been about finding ways to win, having a very versatile team that can win in a number of different ways, and that's the key to success in the NFL.
I completely agree with that. I think especially in a week one divisional game, it's more important to just get the win on the board because you can change up your scheme later. You can change up how you use players later, but you can't change that record later. So I completely agree.
Hmm.
So other than AJ Brown's lack of production with just one catch in the fourth quarter, I'm not really worried about the production. More, I'm so worried about is he still working on that hamstring injury that took him out for most of training camp? Do you have any thoughts on that injury that he may still be working with?
No, I don't think it was injury related. I don't think the Eagles would have sent him out on the field if he wasn't ready to go. Even though AJ is a very headstrong player, headstrong person, and would have probably pleaded and begged to be out there, I trust that the Eagles and their coaching staff and medical staff wouldn't have sent him out there if they didn't think he was ready, especially in week one. Maybe if it's late in the season and you're trying to, jockey for a playoff spot or playoff position, maybe you take a little more of a risk, but there's no need to risk it in September. So him being out there tells me he was fine. And on AJ's side, he works as hard as anyone in the locker room on his body. So I know he's doing everything he can to keep that body healthy, everything that he can control.
I'm glad to hear that because I know those hamstring injuries linger. Brown's had two of them in his
Yeah.
career, and this would be the third one. So it's good to hear that AJ Brown probably not injury related. But the other thing that it could be related is this just the Kevin Patullo offense, or was it a first game just difference from last year? Because the Eagles had the lowest average depth of their targets for the entire league. Is that what you think the offense with Kevin Patullo calling the plays will look like for the rest of the season?
No, I think just Dallas did a great job. The like it kind of points to the last thing I said a couple minutes ago. These teams are all good, and I think Dallas is going to have a pretty good year. Fringe playoff team. They'll probably be competing for a playoff spot for the whole season. They did a good job at taking away some of the things that the Eagles are good at. Diggs is a great cornerback. So no, I wouldn't put too much stock into one game. Kevin Patullo is a good coach. He sees what we see. He knows what he has. Two all league caliber wide receivers. They'll get theirs. They'll eat, but what matters most is they win. And I think if as long as they're winning, I think everybody will be able to figure out the rest.
Okay, I'm very happy with that because I don't obviously don't want anything to be worrying you about the Eagles offense
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that is really where they've taken pride. Maybe not with the passing offense, but with the offense scoring in general. Moving over to the defensive side, there was one big glaring hole that we saw, and that was with the cornerback two position. Adoree Jackson starts the game. He does not do well against CeeDee Lamb. He really has his way in the first half. Then they sub him out, but are you at all, what are you thinking about Adoree Jackson and this cornerback two position right now after the game?
I mean, obviously, you have to be somewhat concerned. That was a concern heading into the season, just what they were going to do at that second cornerback slot. I know the Eagles prefer to have Cooper DeJean in the nickel, um, not on the outside. Obviously, Cooper is extremely versatile. They can use him in a number of different ways. That's part of what makes him really good. But I also think this organization, knows where its bread is buttered and not to get too cute. Cooper proved that he's an elite nickel, so in an ideal world, he'll stay there. They might have to get a little creative if this cornerback two spot continues to struggle. But Adoree's a veteran. I think he'll learn from this game. I mean, I think it helps that he's not going to see CeeDee Lamb and Pickens every week and have someone like Dak Prescott throwing them the ball. Those are three, all league type talents. So that they'll probably do that to a lot of teams opposing secondary this year, but that doesn't excuse the fact that the Eagles have to be better as it comes to that aspect of their football team. I know they like Bennett, the guy they acquired from the Raiders a couple weeks ago. I expect him to get more snaps as the year goes on. They're probably waiting for him to get a little more comfortable. Adoree will be the starting cornerback in Kansas City. Kansas City is down a couple receivers going into that game. So it shouldn't be as tough of an assignment, but obviously you still have Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball, so it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a very hard atmosphere to play in. Obviously, that fan base is probably foaming out the mouth to get the Eagles into town and see what their team can do against them. Obviously, I wouldn't call it like payback for the Super Bowl because it is what it is. The Eagles won the Super Bowl. They could win by 60 points on Sunday. It's not going to get them a Super Bowl. So, but it would be a little satisfaction for those fans, obviously. But so, I guess, there's a bit of concern about with Adoree. He also has to make tackles. Not only did he give up some chunk plays through the air, he missed a couple tackles. And I know that's probably what Vic Fangio is more annoyed about than the coverage in the secondary. But look, Adoree, he strikes me as a guy who's going to put into work. He strikes me as a veteran. He's been in the league a while now. You don't stay in the NFL for no reason. So he has tools to work with. He has coaches who are going to stick with him and give them the best that they have. So it's just on him to play a little better, and I think he will. I do.
Yeah, I think Adoree's going to get a little bit of help just on that he's not as you said playing against George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb again. He's going to be matched up against Hollywood Brown or Juju Smith-Schuster for most of the game, which will be a bit of an easier matchup. But also, as you said, Patrick Mahomes tends to make things happen and work it out,
Yeah.
especially with Andy Reid. But I know you said that Adoree will be the starting cornerback, excuse me, for week two against the Chiefs. But if it were up to you, would you slot Bennett in there just to kind of see how it goes?
John, that's a good question. Like, you see, but the only thing is, like, if it were up to me, I feel like I don't have enough information to make that decision. Um, I'm not in that cornerback room that Christian Parker is coaching. So I don't have the info at my hands to make a decision like that. In an ideal world, with Bennett's pedigree coming from Oakland, that fan base was really upset with him leaving. Everybody's had good words to say about him inside the Eagles building as well. So theoretically speaking, you'd be like, all right, cool, step in and start. But the reality is, he just got here. He's probably still learning the language and some of the Eagles schemes and the defensive playbook. He's still getting comfortable. That's not even considering all the off the field stuff that comes into play when you come to a different team. There's a lot of moving parts. And I think the Eagles want to set him up for success. Um, and look, it's a long season. Cooper DeJean, don't quote me. I don't know exactly what week he finally broke into the lineup and started getting regular snaps, but it was like a month into the season. And look how last year played out. You have to be patient and smart. You could do irreversible damage if you throw Bennett into the fire and he's not quite ready yet. Not necessarily that his skills and his talent isn't ready yet, but there's just football is as much mental as it is physical. If he doesn't have it all upstairs down pat and he's not comfortable, then it could do damage and mess up his confidence, which could affect his play long term. So if the Eagles don't think he's ready to start yet, who am I to question that? So no, I think, you go with the Dory. If it's a train wreck again next week, maybe the sense of urgency heightens and they look to Bennett a little more. But for now, I think the Eagles are doing what they have to do.
That's a good point. I think Adoree as the veteran really has like it's his role to lose. And if he has a good game against the Chiefs, I see no reason why it shouldn't be him for at least a little while more.
Yeah, just
So,
kick
yeah.
kick the ball, kick the ball down the road until you have to make that move. Maybe come week four, it's like, Adoree is still up and down, and Bennett has proved to the coaching staff that he's ready, he's comfortable, and they do exactly what they did with Cooper DeJean and Avonte Maddox last year. And then maybe by week 8, we're not even talking about this. But I like the way the Eagles are playing this, and I do think they've earned the right to kind of let us shut up and sit back and watch. I know some of us in the media, we don't get paid to shut up and sit and watch, but me personally, I'm not the type to overly opine. I kind of just tell it as it is, say what happened and report facts. But I do think the Eagles, they've earned a little rope. I think they know what they're doing.
Yeah, I think this week is a big week for Jackson because CeeDee Lamb's really tough.
Yeah.
Hollywood Brown is a good receiver, obviously. He's been in the NFL for a very long time, but he's not nearly as good as CeeDee Lamb. So I think this week is a big one for Dory Jackson and that corner room as a whole. And obviously, it's a big week for the Eagles. They're facing one of the top teams in the National Football League. But moving on to another issue that I saw in the defense is that lack of discipline I saw. Of course, we
Yeah.
see Jalen Carter ejected after the first play. 110 penalty yards, not all on the defense, but the majority was. How do you see the Eagles, whose main focus of the offseason was mental toughness, working back from that lack of discipline?
Honestly, that might have been a little more concerning than, the play of that second cornerback. Because the discipline stuff is things you can control. Like you let go of Slay, you let go of Isaiah Rodgers. It is what it is. You have Adoree, you have Bennett, you have Ringo. Like you can't create a player. You know what I mean? Like so like that's kind of just like out of their control for now. Obviously, if they still see a problem there, they can go try to acquire somebody else. But with the discipline, that's something that you can control like immediately. And the Jalen Carter thing, I'm not going to really get too much on the coaching staff. They can't like he knows better. He shouldn't have done it. There's nothing else to say. Like it's like if a kid showed up in school and was disrespecting the teachers or doing something crazy, like at some point you can't blame his parents anymore because like at the end of the day, kid knows right from wrong. Like you can't blame the coaching staff because Jalen Carter spit on somebody. Like that's not something you see every day. He was ejected from the game, rightfully so, but it's the other penalties, like I guess like the unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, I guess those were a little ticky tack, especially the one on Nolan Carter after the he made the tackle on the Eagles' former Miles Sanders in the backfield and kind of like flexed over him, but like kept walking. I think that was a ticky tack, but now they know. Now they know they have to reel it in all the way. But like then I watched a lot of football this weekend and I saw players make similar reactions and similar celebrations to what Nolan did, and it went uncalled. But at the end of the day, don't even put yourself into position. Like, let the coaching staff and Howie and some of the other suits, let them go behind closed doors, complain to the NFL, like, hey, why are we getting called for this when this? Let them do that. But the actual guys on the field, just reel it in a little bit. And it was uncharacteristic because the Eagles last year weren't an undisciplined team. Um, so I'm gonna call it an anomaly for now. Now, if next week they get all those penalties and you don't see a mental sharpness, then we can be a little more concerned. So I'm just, I'm gonna take a wait and see approach to it, but it's definitely something that caught my eye because it was messing up the rhythm of the game. It was messing up the flow of the game. A better team might have made them pay more for some of those mistakes. And they were lucky to come out with a win because, when that stuff happens constantly and then the game starts with your best player on defense arguably getting kicked out the game, it's hard to win that way.
Yeah, I believe that Vic Fangio, especially knowing him, will really crack down on this undisciplined play that they had in week one. But maybe that's more hoping than truly believing.
Right. Hold on one second.
Yeah, of
My,
course.
my laptop is dying. I have like 10 billion chargers down here. I'm trying to find the one that works on this computer. Oh, this one is, I think. These Macs. I'm so sorry.
All good.
Okay. We're good to go. We're good to go.
All right, well, I think that might be a little bit of a natural transition. We talked a lot about what the Eagles have did not do well in
Hmm.
week one. Let's move on to what they did do well because we know Jalen Hurts did fantastic. Saquon Barkley, he's amazing. The offensive line did their thing. They gave Jalen Hurts the longest amount of time to throw in the entire league. But can you talk about some of the players that you saw under the radar, not your Jalen's or Saquon's, who really stood out in week one?
That's a great question. Dotson, he was good. It was only that one. I mean, I think he had more than one catch, but it was the one catch that stands out. He's a guy, and it's dating back to last year that I've been impressed with him because his number doesn't get called all that often. And compared to how talented he is, he should probably be getting more opportunities. But it's just the way the cookie crumbles when your top two wide receivers are so talented, and then you have a pass catching tight end who's so talented. Sometimes your number's just not going to be called, but to be so engaged and stay ready when you do go get those opportunities, that's saying a lot. It's hard. We all sit here and be like, well, it's his job. Well, it's this. He's human. It's human nature to kind of just like take the pedal off the metal. Here and there because your name doesn't get called all that often, or to maybe mind wander, or maybe to even get frustrated. But he's able to stay locked in, and that's a skill. That is a skill. And he seems to always come through when his name is called, which is really like the job of a wide receiver number three. We saw it throughout the postseason last year, and then it picked off where it left in week one this year. So Dotson would probably be my first one. And then is it only offense you're talking about?
Either side.
Either side, Jahad Campbell, obviously. He was great. I think he was the highest rated defensive rookie in week one that I saw. Like, I'm not a
I think that's
huge,
correct, yeah.
yeah, NFL in the Pro Football Focus or whatever. Um, I saw that coming just with how he was playing in training camp. Just the way, like, I'm not a football coach, I'm not a scout, but sometimes like people just hop off, like they just like jump off camera when you're looking at him. He's fast, he's big, he runs like a gazelle, and you could see it all throughout training camp. Then you hear the way that his teammates talk about him, going out of their way to compliment him. And it's not even like we're asking a billion questions about him. Sometimes it'll just naturally and organically come up in a conversation how impressive he is to his coaches and his teammates. So I wasn't surprised, but to see it all come together week one is great. It looks like the Eagles have the best linebacking duo in the NFL, and Nakobe Dean isn't even back yet. So Vic will find a way to get Nakobe snaps and reps too, and then you'll have Nakobe, Bone, and Jihad as three really good players. And this is the first time in my life I think I can say that the Eagles had like an above average linebacker room. They've had like individual linebackers that were pretty good, but that was usually one of their weak spots just throughout this organization's history, at least during my life. It seems like the decision makers in the front office have, maybe they might not admit this outwardly, but it seems like they've changed the way they look at that position and started to value it a little more.
Yeah, completely agreed. Howie Roseman never known to draft linebackers, especially in the first round. And
Yeah,
that just shows
exactly.
how good of a player Jahad Campbell is. He can make an
Hmm.
immediate impact, and he did. He's just such an impressive player. He really blows me away. His game, he's just so aggressive, so quick to the ball. He had the forced fumble, he had the big pass breakup. Seems wherever he goes, he's just gonna make a play. I just love his game.
Yeah, I agree.
Actually, another player on the defense, and you mentioned the Pro Football Focus grade. I looked at it after the week and I was really surprised to see, but the highest graded defensive player in the National Football League, Josh Uche. Can you
Oh
speak a little
yeah.
bit about his game?
Yeah, he's another guy. He's just, the coaching staff has been lauding him all off season, and it was great to see him put it together. Obviously, JC put his teammates in a tough spot. He's a guy who plays pretty much the whole game. He gets a lot of snaps and he dominates. So when he leaves the game, other people's roles change. Players play more than maybe they're used to. Players have to, I don't know all the language, but this gap, that gap, somebody has to fill in there. It's a domino effect. And Josh was able to have a bigger role, and he shined. And sometimes somebody not being available is a blessing in disguise to someone else. Now, obviously, are the Eagles better with Jalen Carter? Of course. But one thing my mom always said, don't give someone else an opportunity to do your job better than you. Now, is Jalen Carter in jeopardy of losing a job? Hell no. He's too good. But I think you get my sentiment.
Yeah.
Sometimes when somebody is missing, it just gives other people an opportunity to earn themselves some money as well.
Yeah, Josh Uche, a guy who had over 10 sacks back in 2022. You know the potential's there, and I'm really hoping, and I think I am correct in seeing that Vic Fangio can really unlock him this year. I'm very excited about that. And the Eagles are a team that does not have a lot of edge depth. Nolan Smith, Jalix Hunt, but behind that, it's really Josh Uche. Other than that, they just brought in Zadarius Smith. But if Josh Uche could be a key contributor, excuse me, that would be really, really amazing for this Eagles defense, especially after losing the key edge rusher in Josh Sweat.
Yeah, yeah, they lost Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, guys who are very productive. And I know, like you said, edge depth was a concern. That's why they brought in that guy earlier this week. So, hey, if Josh can keep playing well, that's just gonna make this team that much better.
Okay, so we're almost to the end, but before we go, a big overarching question about the Eagles week, and I have a feeling that I know the answer, but are you satisfied with how the Eagles played and won this game?
Yeah, it's September. You don't get extra points for style at this juncture of the season. I mean, you don't get extra points for style at any juncture of the season, but especially this early, like you said earlier in our conversation, just stack wins. Stack wins. Now, that doesn't mean you ignore some of the things you struggled with, and that coaching staff won't ignore certain things. But I think outside of just having very talented players on their roster and outside of, kind of the sexy stuff you see, like the big stats from the receiver, 2,000 yards from Saquon, I think the Eagles' best quality is being able to win in multiple ways. They showed that so many times last season. And they showed it again week one. They just find ways to win. It sounds cliche, but that's truly a skill. One-dimensional teams don't win Super Bowls. One-dimensional teams can go to the playoffs and win a whole lot of games, but you're going to come into a week where either you have a key injury or a missing player, like the Eagles did. You're going to come into a game where an opposing defense shuts down something that you usually rely on, which the Cowboys did with Devontae and AJ and even Saquon Barkley. He didn't have a good game. Let's just call a spade a spade. They loaded the box. But guess what? None of that mattered. They took away all that, and the Eagles still found a way to win. Jalen Hurts did what he does best, win football games. And yeah, so that's what matters the most. Now, if AJ Brown and Devonta Smith got taken away and the Eagles got blown out, or the Eagles couldn't find a way, and then we're leaving thinking, man, does AJ have to produce that much every week for the Eagles to win, or man, does Saquon have to have 100 yards every week for the Eagles to win? I'd rather be talking about what we're talking about than having those conversations.
Agreed. And I think we looked at the rest of the NFL on Sunday, really examining the rest of the league instead of watching the Eagles. And I wasn't really impressed by many teams. I think the Packers were really one that stood out. But behind
hmm
them, I think the Eagles do not have a lot of teams that can really stand toe to toe to them in the NFC or even in the league.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Eagles are the favorites. I would consider them the favorites. And to be honest, I'm like a natural pessimist. I'm from Philly. I'd like to say I'm a realist, but like I'm definitely going to lean to the left more than the right when it comes to like right being like overly optimistic and left being pessimistic. I'm definitely going to lean that way. And I'm saying they're clearly the team to beat. Detroit, I mean, I think Detroit's going to be good, don't get me wrong, but look, they got dismantled by Green Bay. Who else was really good? Vikings were good last year. They had a nice gutty win. Do you think a rookie quarterback is going to beat this Eagles defense? Probably not. Anything can happen, but I just don't see that. And then, the other player, the Rams, they looked all right. They had to fight tooth and nail to get a win, which is like, I'm saying the same thing about the Eagles. They had to fight tooth and nail. But to your point, there's nobody in the league that you look at and like, wow, like the Eagles have to deal with that. They'll find a way. They usually do. I guess you said the Packers. I'll say the Bills. The Bills were impressive. I mean, they gave up a lot of points, but it's the Ravens. The Ravens are going to score a lot of points on people. So, it's week one. It's a marathon, but I didn't see anything week one from the Eagles or anyone around the league that would make me think that the Eagles aren't one of the favorites to win this thing.
Yeah, well, if you're saying you're a pessimist and you're still saying that the Eagles are the favorites, then I'm feeling pretty good about this
Yeah.
team right now.
Yeah, no, that's truly what I believe. If I didn't believe that, I would tell you something different. It's just, they the Eagles have been so good for so long over the last 3, 4 years. Like it's not a mistake. It's a great football team with great players. It's run well from the coaching staff to the front office, and their leaders have the right attitude, and that's infectious to the rest of the group. Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, just the way they go about their job and their mindset, it rubs off the right way. And Jalen Carter lost his temper a little. He lost his cool, but He'll get through that. He'll get over it. He'll be the dominant player he was last year. Um, I'll say the quiet part out loud. Obviously, you don't want your defensive tackle spitting on anybody, but you also don't want your defensive tackle to be the nicest player in the locker room either. He plays a position where inherently you have to have kind of a mean streak. I don't know if that's the most PC thing to say, but it's just the truth. I played football. I've been in locker rooms. I've been around the sport. Like these guys are going to war, and some people have to get their self to a certain mind space to do what you have to do to be successful in the trenches in the NFL. And Jalen does that. He went too far on Sunday, but like I said, we're not you don't need choir boys in your locker room at every locker. And some of those defensive positions, it's a little advantageous to have some guys who have a mean streak. It is.
Well, I think you're right, and I think that's all I've got for today. Thank you so much, Jason, for joining me. This has been the Kelly Green Room. I'm Jonah, and I am joined by a very special guest, Jason Dumas from 6ABC. Thank you so much for watching.